In our headlines on this Friday afternoon, June 21st, here in South Korea. The Yoon administration is revisiting the issue of arms assistance for Ukraine against Russian aggression, and Vladimir Putin has warned any such shipment of weapons would be, quote, a big mistake. And Foreign Minister Chu leads a high-level debate within the framework of the United Nations Security Council, urging for stronger council action against evolving threats in cyberspace. Meanwhile, South Korea remains absent on a U.S. list of major trading partners whose foreign exchange policies are under scrutiny for the second straight time since being excluded last November. The presidential office here has signaled a potential shift in its policy regarding weapons provision for Ukraine against Russian aggression. Our senior correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
South Korea's measures to potentially send weapons support to Ukraine will depend on Russia's response. That's according to President Yoon's office Friday, a day after Seoul announced it will reconsider its policy of sending only non-lethal aid to Kyiv, as North Korea and Russia signed a treaty on military and economic cooperation. Yoon's office said a variety of measures could be considered for weapons support to Ukraine, with specific measures to be reviewed depending on how the Kremlin responds to Seoul's position on recent developments. National Security Advisor Chang Ho-jin on Thursday delivered the South Korean government's stance after North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin agreed they would provide one another with military and other assistance in the event of aggression, with all means at disposal without delay. Condemning the pact, Chang said he sees any form of cooperation that provides direct or indirect support towards building up North Korea's military as a violation of United Nations Security Council sanctions.
Especially as a permanent member of the UN Security Council that led sanctions against North Korea, Russia's violation of its resolutions by supporting North Korea threatens our security and will inevitably harm Seoul-Moscow relations.
Since the outbreak of the war in Ukraine in 2022, South Korea has maintained a policy of providing only humanitarian aid and non-lethal military supplies to Ukraine. Chang said the government will now reconsider that policy. Seoul also plans to strengthen its sanctions regime, targeting 243 new subjects, including 4 Russian ships, 5 organizations, and 8 North Korean individuals involved in weapons and oil exchanges between the two sides. Chang said the measures were decided after a review of Pyongyang and Moscow's Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Pact released on Thursday morning, but noted all specific details had not yet been fully grasped. While the North Korean leader declared the treaty raises their partnership to an alliance, the Russian president's more subdued remarks suggest otherwise. The treaty's controversial Article 4 on mutual assistance refers to their respective domestic laws and Article 51 of the UN Charter that recognizes a state's right to self-defense. This suggests the current pact may not trigger an immediate allied intervention as a mutual defense treaty would, according to a senior official. In any case, Seoul says it will firmly respond to any actions threatening its security and further reinforce the South Korea-US alliance and their trilateral cooperation with Japan to neutralize North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. Meanwhile, the US State Department on Thursday said it welcomes any support to Ukraine in fighting Russia's aggression, but the question of supplying weapons is each country's decision to make. Washington also expressed deep concern over Putin's threat to supply Pyongyang with weapons as a response to support for Kyiv, warning that such a move would destabilize the Korean peninsula. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, addressing the press poll in Vietnam on Thursday, Russia's Vladimir Putin claimed any shipment of weapons to Ukraine by South Korea would be, quote, a big mistake. Our Choi Soo-young covers his remarks.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has warned that it will be a very big mistake if South Korea provides lethal weapons to Ukraine and that Russia will respond if it does. According to TASS and Sputnik news agencies, President Putin made this statement during a press conference in Hanoi, Vietnam on Thursday as he concluded his tour of North Korea and Vietnam. On the same day, South Korea's presidential office said it would reconsider the issue of providing weapons to Ukraine, criticizing the treaty and the comprehensive strategic partnership signed between North Korea and Russia. So far, the South Korean government has maintained a principle of not supplying lethal weapons to Ukraine. Regarding the North and Russia signing the treaty, Putin said there's nothing new compared to the one signed in the 1960s and that South Korea does not need to worry as the military assistance only applies when either one is attacked. Putin also mentioned that Moscow has not asked Pyongyang for any support for a special military operation in Ukraine. However, he added that Russia is currently monitoring the situation as Ukraine's attacks on the border area of Belgorod with Western long-range weapons are considered an invasion. He also said that Moscow does not rule out providing Pyongyang with high-precision weapons in response to Western countries providing weapons to Ukraine. The Russian president said that while the crisis on the Korean peninsula is heating up, he hopes the treaty with North Korea and Russia will have some deterrent effect. Cheon, Arirang News.
Troops from North Korea crossed the military demarcation line yet again on Thursday morning. According to South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff on this Friday, several soldiers from North Korea briefly crossed the border while working within the central part of the demilitarized zone. They returned to their side of the border after South Korean military fired warning shots and aired warning messages. Now, this is the third such intrusion following a similar incident back on Tuesday and another some 2 weeks ago. Authorities here said Thursday's border intrusion appears to have been accidental, as were the previous 2 cases. In other news, Foreign Minister Chu led a high-level debate within the UN Security Council, urging for stronger council action against evolving threats in cyberspace. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
The UN Security Council on Thursday convened an official meeting on cybersecurity, as North Korea has been relying on illicit cyber activities to evade UNSC sanctions and generate revenue to fund its nuclear and missile programs. The meeting is seen as being significant given rising tensions on the Korean peninsula, marking the first official UNSC meeting on the issue since June 2021. South Korean Foreign Minister Cho presided over the meeting as the council's rotating president. There, he said the council must confront real and present cybersecurity threats head-on while stressing the UNSC's role in the fight.
The linkage of cyber threats and international peace and security is evident, and the Security Council has a key role to play in addressing cyber threats to fulfill its primary responsibility for maintenance of international peace and security.
Joe said the cybersecurity threat posed by North Korea is nothing new, noting that the regime systematically evades sanctions adopted by the UNSC and challenges international non-proliferation through its illicit activities. The minister cited a report of the expert panel of the Security Council's North Korea Sanctions Committee, which found that North Korea has procured 40% of the funds for the development of weapons of mass destruction through illegal cyber activities. For the UNSC to tackle cyber threats, Cho put forward a 3-step approach of diagnosis, prescription, and treatment to respond to cybersecurity-related issues. South Korea, the United States, and Japan hosted an informal UNSC meeting in April on North Korea's evolving cyber threats. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Come Monday next week, Incheon City will host the 2024 UN Public Service Forum, a 3-day platform of information sharing on innovative examples of public service. Now, this is the first time in 10 years that South Korea is hosting the event and the first time in 5 years that the forum is being held face-to-face in light of the previous pandemic. Over 2,000 participants from over 100 countries are poised to gather in Incheon to ponder prospects of innovation from the perspective of the public sector amid a host of global concerns. South Korea remains absent on a U.S. list of countries whose foreign exchange policies are under scrutiny. The U.S. Treasury Department back on Thursday shared its semi-annual report on forex policies of the country's major trading partners. That includes China, Japan, Taiwan, and Germany, among others. Countries are placed on the list when they meet 2 out of 3 criteria, including a bilateral trade surplus with the U.S. of at least $15 billion and persistent one-sided intervention in the foreign exchange market. South Korea had been on the list since 2016, but it was excluded from last November's report. Korea's producer prices rose yet again in May on the back of costlier services and industrial energy bills. According to the Bank of Korea on this Friday, the producer price index gained 0.1% in May on month. Now, this is the 6th month in a row that the index has logged on-month gains. While wholesale prices of agricultural, forestry and fisheries products dropped on month, prices of services and industrial energy bills rose 0.5%. The President's policy discussion sessions with members of the public resumed earlier on Thursday, and this time the venue was Gyeongsangbuk-do Province, where he pledged to foster a regional manufacturing center. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon reports.
Gyeongsangbuk-do Province as Northeast Asia's manufacturing innovation hub. That was the topic of President Yoon Suk-yeol's 26th policy discussion with citizens on Thursday at the province's Yeongnam University. Among the many things that President Yoon pledged to make this happen were improvements to the underdeveloped transportation infrastructure.
교통 인프라 확충은 경북의 제조 혁신 허브로의 도약을 위해서 반드시 필요하고 또 도민들의 삶의 질 향상에도 필수적입니다. 먼저 사업계획 검토 막바지 단계인 3조 4천억 규모의 영일만 횡단 고속도로 건설을 빠르게 추진하겠습니다.
This would connect 2 different ports in Pohang, the nation's steel mill city on the east coast. It'll be 18 kilometers long and will contain bridges. On top of this, President Yoon has pledged to support the establishment of a 300 billion won, or around $260 million industrial complex for SMRs, or small modular reactors, in Gyeongju, another city in the province. The new type of nuclear energy technology is being sought after by countries around the world to get ahead in the technology, and President Yoon is looking to make Gyeongju the nation's SMR manufacturing hub. He also pledged to support the region's hydrogen energy production sectors, tourism, as well as agricultural business. Meanwhile, President Yoon praised the region for its history of providing a basis for the nation's economic success. The region is where the Saemaeul Undong came from, a community-driven development program in the 70s when it was still battling poverty, a movement that has been credited as making the miracle on the Hangang River possible. In fact, Yeongnam University has a department dedicated to studying the movement and international development, with many up-and-coming African young students coming to learn about it. This was brought up during the recent Korea-Africa Summit as well.
새마을 운동과 우리의 발전 경험을 학문화한 영남대의 새마을 학은 지난 한아프리카 정상회의에서도 각국 정상들에게 많은 관심과 주목을 받았습니다. 많은 국가의 리더들이 또 리더가 될 청년들이 이곳에서 국가 발전에 관한 공부를 하고 큰 기여를 했다는 얘기를 아프리카 각국 정상들에게 많이 들었습니다.
This 26th policy discussion was participated by around 100 government officials and citizens, including business leaders in hydrogen and nuclear energy, entrepreneurs, and local residents. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And much to the relief of consumers here, electricity prices will remain unchanged. At a meeting on this Friday to decide rates for the third quarter, the Korea Electric Power Corporation announced that the fuel cost adjustment unit price would remain at plus 5 Korean won per kilowatt-hour during the July to September period. Fuel price adjustments here in the country are determined within the range of plus or minus 5 won per kilowatt hour, with adjustments made on the 21st of the month to better reflect energy prices before the start of the following quarter. The Special Committee on Medical Reform has proposed a system to ensure the presence of medical staff at hospitals amid the prolonged standoff with the broader medical community. Our Yoon has details.
The medical dispute continues in South Korea with no breakthrough between the government and the medical community. And on Thursday, the Presidential Special Committee on Medical Reform held its fourth meeting. It announced its plans for a new two-step system to manage the supply of medical personnel by September. According to Chief Do Yeon-hong, there will be two special committees. One comprised of experts that will discuss the supply of medical professionals, which will then report to the decision-making body. The second is the final decision-making body, which will be led by the health minister.
Conducting estimates through research as needed for the supply of medical personnel and workforce policy decisions has frequently resulted in social conflicts. Therefore, the committee has agreed to systematize the decision-making processes to enhance rationality and societal trust in healthcare workforce policies.
These organizations will address workforce policies, including adjustments to university enrollments, which have been a long-held point of dispute between the government and the medical community. Opposing the government's plan to expand the medical school quota, medical professors at Seoul National University Hospital and its affiliate hospitals began an indefinite walkout on Monday. An emergency committee from the hospitals held a meeting on Thursday to vote on whether to continue the strike into next week. The health ministry, during a briefing on Thursday morning, urged the Korean Medical Association to reconsider its indefinite strike starting on June 27th and resolve issues through dialogue with the government. The walkout plan, announced by the Korean Medical Association on Tuesday by its president, Lee Myung-taek, however, is facing criticism within other areas of the medical community, calling it a unilateral decision, including the Korean Intern Resident Association. Meanwhile, the Korean Medical Association held a press conference on Thursday, announcing the establishment of a countermeasure committee encompassing all doctor associations. They stated that unless there is a change in the government's stance on the demands, an indefinite strike will be discussed on the 22nd, during which the first meeting will be held. The Korea Severe Disease Association on the same day requested the government hold a public hearing to discuss the deployment of doctors with foreign licenses to provide medical services in the country. Yoon, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, on the travel front, a record number of passengers flew between South Korea and Japan during the first 5 months of this year. According to Seoul's Transport Ministry on this Friday, the figure stands at 10 million, almost double compared to the same period last year. This is also the highest since relevant data was first compiled in 2009. Pundits are linking the boost in travel to the weak Japanese yen and to a surge in the number of flights from Korea to Japan that have jumped some 40% on year. And travel trends among foreigners to Korea are changing from consumption-based to culture-based activities. That being said, the country's southern resort island of Jeju-do is seeking to better reflect this reality in its tourism marketing. Our Park Gon-woo explains.
Popular tourist destination Jeju Island has big plans to grab the attention of foreign tourists by offering a diverse range of activities. Data from the Jeju Tourism Organization showed that from January to April 2024, there was a nearly 440% increase in the number of foreign tourists on year. And to coincide with the boost in tourist numbers, Jeju is preparing to launch several special interest tours or SITs with a wide variety of activities including golf, horse riding, cycling, and more. As part of a pre-release program, Jeju has been running familiarization tours since March for people working in the tourism industry, as well as members of activity clubs from different countries. The tour I joined included people developing tourism programs for Chinese youngsters. An official I spoke to said the program was developed under the terms of the joint declaration from the recent trilateral summit between Korea, Japan, and China, which aims to increase personal exchanges between teenagers from those countries.
I'm out at sea near Jeju Island on an exciting yacht ride taking in the sea air. This is just one part of the island's special interest tour that's soon to be launched.
Two Haenyeo women, divers who harvest seafood without the use of breeding apparatus, were also on board as part of the tour for tourists to learn more about Haenyeo culture. During this trip, They returned from their dive with seaweed and sea urchins to share with the group.
I hope a lot of foreign people come and see for themselves and know more about Haenyas.
Kayaking in a transparent kayak on the emerald-colored sea and racing down 3 different tracks in electric carts were also part of the tour program. There was also a guided tour of Yongmori Beach and its dragon head-shaped cliff made by the volcano, which aims to add educational value for youngsters that will participate in the special interest tours in the near future.
Jeju travel used to be shopping-oriented, but has been changing to an experience-oriented thing, like visiting restaurants. It's good so that people can experience Jeju culture, food, and customs in depth.
As Jeju aims to bring in many more foreign tourists from different countries, eyes are on whether these special interest tours will add vitality to the region's tourism. 박건우, Arirang News, Jeju.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte is set to become the next Secretary General of NATO following the withdrawal of the only other candidate in the race. 57-year-old Rutte officially became the only candidate left to replace the incumbent NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg after Romanian President Klaus Iohannis withdrew his bid at the end of last week. Stoltenberg's term as the chief of the military alliance expires in October, 10 years after he took office in 2014. Rutte, who served as the Dutch Prime Minister for almost 14 years, put his name down for NATO's top job in the wake of the collapse of his coalition government last summer. He is a fierce critic of the Russian President Vladimir Putin and has been actively promoting Europe's military support for Ukraine since 2022. Moving over to India, at least 36 people died and more than 60 have been admitted to hospital as of Thursday after consuming illicit tainted liquor sold in the country's southern state of Tamil Nadu. According to a government spokesperson, since Wednesday, over 100 people have been suffering from stomach aches, diarrhea, and vomiting and required medical treatment. Police arrested a 49-year-old man named Govindaraj for producing and selling the illicit liquor, seizing some 200 litres of it. The Tamil Nadu state government has also suspended at least 10 officials, including the police chief and the district's collector. The illegally produced tainted alcohol is commonplace in India, where many cannot afford branded spirits. Last year, more than a dozen people died in a similar incident. Now to the US, where a wildfire in the state of New Mexico continued to burn out of control on Thursday, despite efforts from firefighters dropping water and fire retardant from the air and bringing in heavy equipment to construct fire lines. Local police said Wednesday there had been at least 2 fatalities, including one unidentified person found in the driver's seat of a scorched vehicle. The state's governor confirmed on the same day that over 1,400 structures, including homes, were destroyed in the southern part of the state. She also requested a major disaster declaration from President Joe Biden for the fires, which have burned up almost 100 square kilometers of land. Incheon, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. The scorching heat wave in central regions and Jeollabuk-do continues on this summer solstice. While parts of Gyeonggi-do, including Goyang, are under a heat wave warning. Meanwhile, southern provinces got nice relief yesterday, but afternoon highs returned right back to the 30s this afternoon. So Seoul gets up to 34 degrees, Gwangju topping out at 31 under mostly sunny skies with strong UV rays during the day. Meanwhile, monsoon rain takes a break on Jeju today with a high of 28 degrees Celsius. But rain returns to Jeju early tomorrow, dropping up to 200 millimeters of heavy showers into Sunday. The south coast will also see downpours. Now, the monsoon season also starts in southern parts of the country this weekend, with 10 to 60 millimeters of showers in the forecast for Gyeongsangbuk-do Provinces. It's not going to rain in the capital over the weekend, but showers will bring much needed heat relief to the central parts of the country. And then the new week starts on a rainy note in the capital and Gyeongsangbuk-do Province. With that in mind, let's take a look at the international weather conditions.
Right, and that ends our Friday afternoon newscast. Coming up next is our daily panel session, and today we address Seoul's diplomatic ties with Tokyo ahead of their 60th anniversary next year.